As 2022 comes to a close, does Seattle have an upbeat future ahead?
We've made progress. We need to continue to make progress.
It's our neighborhood!
But worries over public safety, homelessness, and racial justice have hit some neighborhoods harder than others.
There's a feeling in the community that we're just being dumped on a lot.
And with tech layoffs and possibly a looming recession, Seattle leaders are concerned about what 2023 will hold.
I do feel like there's a profound sense of equilibrium that we're searching for in this city.
How has Seattle fared in 2022? And what are the year's top stories?
There's a lot of empty space in downtown right now.
Our panel of journalists weighs in.
Next year is really pivotal.
Those shelter beds are necessary and they have to go somewhere.
It's time to reflect on the major headlines and biggest surprises of 2022. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to this edition of City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. As 2022 comes to a close, beyond the continuing struggle of the pandemic, plenty of stories are pushing to be the top local headline of the year. In Seattle, concerns over public safety and police hiring have divided our city council. And the rejection of an expanded homeless shelter in the Chinatown ID neighborhood has King County leaders scrambling for answers. And at the state level, the need to fix a broken drug possession law demands attention from a legislature full of fresh faces. This week, it's a review of these top stories and more from the past year as we look ahead to 2023. Read all about it. 2022 was a year Seattle found itself overloaded with major stories, and when the Northwest Asian Weekly had a lot to say about them.
We do have a voice, and I think that this year especially, we've really just kind of stepped up the local community and said, this is not what we want. Listen to us.
Editor Ruth Bayang and others in the Chinatown ID successfully pushed back on King County's plan to expand a homeless shelter here and put a plan on hold from Sound Transit to build a light rail station that could severely disrupt this neighborhood during the construction process.
There's a feeling in the community that we're just being dumped on a lot.
Bayang agrees that light rail is a critical part of our local economy and that more homeless shelters are needed, but says these projects could be located in other neighborhoods too.
Why does it have to be here? We feel as if other options and other sites have not been fully explored.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and showing up for our community.
Bayang says the activism to fight against anti-Asian hate in Seattle, which rose sharply during the pandemic, has also led to even more voices pressing local leaders to answer their concerns about police staffing levels and public safety, two more top headlines of 2022.
There has to be real solutions where, our seniors are not being afraid to walk the streets and being afraid of being attacked, and businesses aren't frustrated with someone sleeping on the front door or urinating or defecating, All these things matter.
These things also matter to Rachel Smith, CEO of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce.
There was a missed opportunity to rebuild some of the trust with the public on public safety.
While the City Council fully funded the Seattle Police Department's hiring plan for next year, a rift has formed over the removal of 80 unfilled positions from the SPD's budget.
The voters are looking for an all-of-the-above approach.
Smith says the Chamber's ongoing citywide polling, published again this fall, shows that Seattleites want the right number of cops on the street, but also want alternatives to 911, plus police reform. And that's not all.
We really want to see more housing built in more places for more people at more affordable levels.
The council's move to invest nearly $500 million in affordable housing over the next 2 years is another big story for 2022, especially in an unsettled job market.
There is certainly some economic uncertainty, and we are seeing some job losses.
So, looking ahead?
If I was a candidate in 2023, I would be talking about addressing homelessness, public safety, and how I was going to shift and push policy to allow for more housing.
I feel a deep sense of fulfillment.
After 14 years in Olympia, Reuven Carlyle knows those issues well.
I do feel like there's a profound sense of equilibrium that we're searching for in this city.
Carlyle, the outgoing state senator of the 36th district in northwest Seattle, is one of several lawmakers stepping down from local office.
There's just a number of people sort of transitioning out of the legislature, but we have a really strong group of people coming in.
Democrats gained on their majorities in the state House and Senate in the recent midterms, but they have a massive job to do in the next session.
I don't think most people in Seattle want ubiquitous decriminalization of every aspect of fentanyl and heroin and every aspect of drugs.
The Blake decision from the Washington State Supreme Court last year struck down the state's main drug possession crime, which lawmakers only temporarily fixed in the 2022 session, and passed finding answers to that problem in 2023. Carlyle says the state will be implementing a new cap and invest system to reduce industrial carbon emissions, as well as new clean fuel and building efficiency measures he's championed.
All of these bills are decarbonization bills as well as infrastructure bills and jobs bills. So it's a real societal shift, it's an economic shift, and it's a policy shift.
A shifting future in a region sure to see more big headlines coming next year.
We've made progress. We need to continue to make progress.
Seeing the community come together, I really look forward to seeing more of that in 2023.
And we have a team of great journalists to answer some of these different issues and questions that are going on in the city right now. And we have with us Amy Radil, a reporter for KUOW. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
We also have with us Mike Lewis, a writer for GeekWire. Mike, good to have you too.
Good to be here.
And we also have Erica C. Barnett, editor for PubliCola. Erica, good to see you too.
Great to be here.
And Erica, let me start with you here. Over this past week, we learned that Seattle City Council President Deborah Juarez won't be running again in District 5. Councilmember Lisa Herbold won't be running again in District 1. Now, Juarez had said before she wasn't going to run again, but Herbold is saying, I'm out and we need another progressive in D1, basically. So all 7 district council seats are up for election next year. I know that's going to be fun for me and for you, but I'm wondering where the political momentum is, basically. Do we look at the midterms of 2022 and say, okay, there's a progressive push here, Lisa Mannion was elected, things of that nature? Or do we look at the 2021 election of Mayor Harrell and City Attorney Davison and say, maybe it'll be a little bit more moderate? Some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think city council elections are always really interesting because the outcome is so determined by who runs, right? So I think it's very, very hard to predict, a backlash election like I think we saw in 2021 or a super progressive election, because what happens is 15 people get in, 2 make it through. It's always a little bit unpredictable. We're also going to have new districts next year.
Right.
We've redistricted the whole council, so people are going to be running with new constituencies.
Yeah.
And there's also going to be ranked choice voting, which also could change the outcome a little bit. So I think it's really, really hard to say, where the political shape of the council is going to go. And, and remember, Lisa Herbold's not running because she said it is, it's gotten too toxic.
Yeah.
And so I always wonder, who gets into these races knowing that it's kind of becoming a worse and worse job from the perspective of people running.
It's a difficult job. Ranked choice voting, as I understand it, wouldn't be in place until 2027, but we'll see. I know they do want to try to hurry this thing up.
Thank you for correcting me. Yes, you're absolutely right. 2027. So I apologize. So but new districts next year, and then in the future, ranked choice.
Yeah. It's important to point that out. Thank you. Amy, maybe I can just get your thoughts on this. The impact with the council here, Juarez, Herbold not running again. District elections are a little different. They're a little bit smaller, but where do you see the political winds blowing right now?
Well, I feel like it's been pretty healthy dialogue this year. I mean, we've had kind of a new, counterbalance of people who definitely have different positions, with Sarah Nelson coming onto the council.
Sure.
But I don't know, I was thinking about it. Maybe you guys think this is Pollyannish, but I feel like, there's been pretty healthy discussion. It hasn't, even in the budget process, they all acknowledged each other and the mayor and said, that everyone weighed in. It was a pretty good discussion. Yes, there were a few issues of disagreement, but it wasn't that toxic from my vantage point. So, but I think these are going to be open seats, so no name recognition. So, and it's always hard for us to know how are these races going, because there's not much polling. They can be really unpredictable. So the primaries for these things are always nuts. And you say 15 candidates, it could even be more. So we'll see. Maybe Mike, I can jump into this with you. And Erica brought this up. The side note that our districts have actually changed boundaries based on the 2020 census numbers. So whoever represents District 1, that West Seattle area, it's going to have to reckon with Pioneer Square and Soto now. Then you think about District 6, where Dan Strauss is right now. That candidate's going to have to deal with the perhaps more conservative voters in Magnolia,
who are also kind of ticked off that their neighborhood got split up because of redistricting. Your thoughts on the future?
Where I live, actually.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. You have some thoughts on the future here?
We are actually staying put as far as who is representing us in the district.
I see.
But I think what's really interesting, the thing that's, and maybe Erica can speak to this, I'm curious as to when it's going to feel like they actually are running in districts, right? When we switched to a district election, which I think everyone here probably remembers pretty well, I expected there to be much more sort of specific district representation, and it still doesn't feel to me like there is that sort of identity with a district that usually comes along with a district-based election, and people worried about their own district as opposed to city policy. It feels less, how can I put it? It feels less new than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to feel something like there's a strong identity within a district, and that really hasn't happened. So to your point about all of these seats being open, this is, I think, going to be, it's kind of a full employment act for political journalists, right? It is going to be busy and interesting. And I think that's going to be, that's not only going to be fun, I think that the nice thing about it is I think it is going to bring some new faces in, and that should be interesting. And I think that, to your point, I think it is a lot more functional now. You know, at least having somebody in the mayor's office who actually served on the city council, I think really changed the dynamic.
I was going to say, in this one Seattle ethic that Mayor Bruce Harrell has talked about, maybe I can do a 20-second heat check down the line here. Your thoughts about the mayor's performance in his first year? He was talking about, we're going to put these divisive politics behind it. We're going to put Seattle is dying behind us or whatever else. Has he come through on that? What do you think, Amy?
There were a couple good moments this year. I thought I was downtown for the tree lighting, you know, and the mayor was there, and it was just kind of like we're firing on all boosters, like there's fireworks going off and the lights are going on, and you know, but it was like, okay, we're really trying, we're really trying to be together in our downtown like we, like years past. And the other memory that strikes me is the memorial for Devon Pickett Jr., where the mayor came and spoke, and I did feel like there was some comfort in such a grief-stricken event in having a mayor who's like, I'm from this neighborhood, I know this community, I played sports in the same league, so there was this sense of being seen and understood, even though our gun violence is such a terrible problem right now.
Thank you for that. Some thoughts here, Mike, kind of a heat check on how the mayor's doing?
Well, I think that the mayor has the benefit of following a mayor who I think got to a place where she didn't seem to enjoy the job at all, and really had gotten tired of it. And also didn't come from, you don't become a United States attorney without having some political skill, but did not come from elected office. And I think that Harrell walked into this situation with kind of nothing but an upward trajectory, right? It was going to be like that for him anyway, and he said all of the right things, and he's sort of been trying, with some sort of hiccups, he's been trying to push his agenda on fixing downtown and tough on crime and things like that. So I would say that, generally speaking, if you were to, the polling that I think Danny Westneat referenced in his column shows him as the most popular politician in Seattle. So there you go. So I guess by one measure, he's doing well.
Got that going for him. Erica, heat check on the mayor here.
Sure. I agree with everything both of the other panelists have said. I will say, there's a lot of things that the mayor promised on his campaign that he has not come through with. For example, coming up with 2,000 new shelter and housing beds. He sort of fudged that a little bit. So now I've identified 2,000 shelter and housing beds, which is not the same thing. So I am curious going into 2023 if some of these priorities are going to come back, and if council members and the public are going to start saying, look, I see a lot of sweeps happening of homeless encampments, but then they pop back up in my neighborhood 2 weeks later. So, there is kind of a honeymoon period that has lasted a very long time. And I think, 2023 will be the time when, that sort of comes home to roost one way or another.
And we're going to jump back on the homelessness issue in just a little bit. But Mike, let me jump back to you. I want to talk about what's happening in downtown Seattle here. Amy kind of brought this up earlier. We've got the DSA, these other groups really energized about what's happening downtown and hoping to see an upward trend there. But we still only have maybe 40% of the workers who used to be downtown back on the job in person compared to pre-pandemic. Are those workers going to come back? Yes or no? What do you think about that? What does that mean for downtown? And also, we got all these tech layoffs to think about, too.
I don't think we know yet what it's going to mean for downtown. Certainly, we're facing fewer people in downtown just as a result of layoffs alone, right? And we have a whole bunch of people now working remotely. Zillow essentially cleared out an entire skyscraper. So you have that. coupled with the other end of it, and the other end of it is that tourism is kind of back to normal. The hotel bookings are way up. They're essentially pre-pandemic levels. You go down to Pike Market in summer and it looks as it always did, crowded and, you know, and busy. I think that on those measures, on the tourism measures, it's looking pretty good. If you have a business in downtown that is dependent on workers being downtown, if you're a small restaurant or something like that, it's still not good. And it's not going to get, I think, a whole lot better over the course of the next year. Recruiters would tell me when I was interviewing them about a variety of tech stories here in Seattle, that you cannot expect to recruit talent without offering a remote work component anymore. And so once you get to that, that is going to mean people either are downtown less or not downtown at all. Yeah. And I think that is going to change the dynamic. Now, is downtown, there's a lot of empty space in downtown right now. A lot of companies, the F5 building, they're subleasing like a lot of space to other people. So I think it's a wait and see on that, on when people do come back. My guess is that it's also it was historically, and I think you're probably more familiar with this, the fastest growing neighborhood in terms of residents in Seattle. And so you still got all these people, but if you don't have the tech workers down there, what happens then is you don't have all of those services that come along with them. And so you end up living in, I don't know, it's not necessarily a grocery store desert down here.
I get what you're saying.
But it's kind of close.
Yeah. Oh, maybe I can go to you on this, Amy, because this whole idea of these workers not coming back downtown. There's also a concern about public safety downtown. That's a big piece of this. I wanted to talk about this because crime numbers are starting to drop slightly in Seattle, but there's still this image that Seattle might not be a safe place to be. So I'm thinking about Adrian Diaz, just about to be confirmed as our permanent police chief here. You've got Lisa Mannion as our prosecutor now. What impact are those figures going to have? Are they going to help with this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the vote for Lisa Mannion was not a huge challenge to what Dan Satterberg's approach has been. You know, he endorsed her. She's been, you know, spent her career chief of staff in the office. So, and I think their emphasis has been, you know, he's been a progressive prosecutor, but he did say that he thinks some things like the idea of zero youth detention, he has said he doesn't think that that's a realistic notion. So progressive, but not embracing every single thing on that spectrum, but really trying to steer especially young people and lower level people away from incarceration. So I think that part's going to continue. As far as Chief Diaz, you know, the department says they're having, I think, some success in recruitment, slightly. They're still losing a lot of people. So it's, you know, it can be very, very small progress from their vantage point. But basically, you know, kind of slight progress going forward, and he seems to be pretty well regarded, you know, as far as, you know, the new leader for the department.
So far, so good. And Erica, maybe I can jump on this other public safety issue with you. We saw a very visible split in the Seattle City Council over this decision to remove 80 unfilled positions from the SPD's hiring authority. There was a 6-3 vote on the final budget. Councilmember Sawant always votes against the budget, but this time Nelson and Peterson joined her. Is Seattle going to be able to change this narrative on public safety after what seemed to me a pretty bruising budget process?
Yeah, I mean, I think people go downtown and they can see, as Mike said, you know, it's starting to fill back up. It's starting to feel, I mean, I never felt that it like really felt unsafe, but it did feel very empty. So I think there's you know, with crime and safety, there's always a perception issue. But, you know, I think too, with Adrian Diaz coming on as permanent chief, he was mentioning during his nomination hearing the other day that, you know, violent crime is down, and to have the police chief saying that, who's usually, you know, the one out there screaming that they need, you know, more officers and more money, to sort of acknowledge, like, look, things are getting better. You know, that's a good sign, and I do think a lot of safety really is perception. It always is, and so, you know, the police chief is saying it's safer, and, you know, they're hiring more officers. Not very many. They're saying there's going to be 18 net new officers in the next 2 years. That's a very small amount, but it is a trend in the positive direction.
Right.
So, so I think, you know, I mean, we'll see what happens with the economy in 2023, but it certainly feels like things are on an upward trajectory, at least in terms of perception.
And I'm going to try to talk about another perception issue with regard to homelessness here. I'm going to try to pick up the pace ever so slightly with you, if I could. This whole idea of zero functional homelessness downtown. We've heard Mark Dones, who's the CEO of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, talk about it. Is it going to happen? Amy, I know it's a broad question, but let me start with you on that one. What do you think?
Well, I think next year is really pivotal because,
test.
As you were saying, the mayor has identified units. They aren't online yet, but according to their dashboard, there's, I think 1,000 units that are supposed to come online in the next year. So we should really see things happening as opposed to behind the scenes planning that was happening this year, from my understanding.
Yeah, and Erica, let me jump to you on this one because I previewed a little bit and actually showed what was happening in the Chinatown ID neighborhood. They successfully pushed back on the expansion of a shelter there. And I know you keep very close eye on this kind of a thing. What does that mean for our shelter beds, I guess? And then in the bigger picture, what does this mean for establishing more enhanced shelter options around King County?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things can be true about that shelter in Chinatown. They did not do adequate outreach, is kind of the consensus. But at the same time, those shelter beds are necessary and they have to go somewhere. I mean, there's a high acuity shelter for people with really intense medical needs, and that's actually on that dashboard as something that's coming online that's not going to happen. So some of the stuff on the dashboard is like off the table. So I think that the county, are the ones who kind of caved on that, are going to have to figure out a way to push back and say, look, we do have to have shelter somewhere. Maybe it's in North Seattle, maybe it's in Queen Anne, but it has to happen somewhere because otherwise we're not going to see any progress.
Mike, I think also about a lot of big tech companies kind of joining in with this. The Partnership for Zero. You got Amazon, Microsoft ponying up nearly $10 million to work on this issue, specifically downtown. Your thoughts about this whole zero functional homelessness, which basically means fewer people are going into homelessness than are actually going into services. I should point that out. But your thoughts about this, reducing homelessness downtown?
I think downtown in Seattle has always been the public face of homelessness, right? I mean, everyone, that's where the photos exist. That's where all the video happens. That's where people always have run those photos again and again and again on news websites all over town. I think you see a lot less of that now. Zero functional homelessness. I don't know. I worry sometimes about effective sloganeering.
Yeah, the aspirational goals.
The aspirational goals.
Yeah.
I mean, we know about the pedestrian safety zero.
Vision zero. Right. Yeah.
Was not met with any sort of a zero actual outcome, right? So, I mean, I think it's aspirational. I think that the tech companies getting involved and acknowledging at least a role in driving housing costs beyond what a lot of folks in town can afford, and that is obviously a component of homelessness.
Yeah.
I think the fact that these companies are getting very involved in that is good.
Yeah.
And I think that Microsoft in particular has a couple of really interesting approaches when it's dealing with housing issues. It's not just one thing, it's doing a variety of things. I think that this is a sign that these are companies now sort of moving to that second level of getting actually more civically involved rather than just deciding that this is a town with a bunch of people we can hire and let's grow rapidly and all of that. It seems like a deeper level of civic involvement, and so I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Thank you for that. Amy, I want to make sure I talk about this with you, the move for the legislature this coming session on the Blake decisions. This was that 2021 ruling by the state Supreme Court that basically struck down drug possession as a felony here in Washington. State lawmakers made this temporary fix last session. I don't know if it's working out all that great. That's some of the reports that I've seen. But what happens this session with Blake?
Yeah, so basically at the end of the last session, they said, okay, drug possession is going to be a misdemeanor now, but police need to refer people to services twice before they could arrest them for that misdemeanor.
Right.
So a lot of people say it's not really, it doesn't function very well because there's no way to track those referrals. People move around to different cities, so it's basically not enforced very often. So we're close to, in practice, we're close to it being kind of decriminalized, which is what Oregon has done. Meanwhile, some cities in South King County are so unhappy about this that they've kind of passed their own drug penalties. So now that we're all kind of positioning for the next session, I think, and are we going to go ahead and completely decriminalize? Meanwhile, we're supposed to be ramping up treatment and services to help people with addiction, regardless of whether we keep it as a crime or not, I think. So that's kind of, looking towards the session as far as I can see.
Yeah, we'll see. And you had something to say about that, Erica.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing, and I'm not reporting on this heavily yet, but they're going to, essentially, there's a sunset. It's going to, this legislation they passed last year is going to expire, and so they have to pass new legislation.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is they're going to probably turn it into a misdemeanor and have like these kind of stages that you have to go through leading towards different types of treatment. Personally, I think that is perhaps a misunderstanding of both, drug possession, like not everybody who possesses drugs needs to go to intensive addiction treatment, and also a misunderstanding of how many treatment beds we actually have. We are very short on treatment beds. The county has 244 beds in the entire county, and a larger number in the state, of course, but nowhere near enough.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to ask the 30-second version, if I could, Erica, this initiative that's going to be on the ballot in February, right around the corner here, with social housing here in Seattle, I-135. Can you talk about that a little bit? This was established, this public developer to create this housing. And I know there's a lot of question marks around this. Would you mind breaking that one down for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, for the campaign, a matter of explaining how this is different from other forms of public housing. And I think the campaign's pitch would be that, it's permanently affordable and it's going to be run by these kind of panels of tenants primarily. And so that's going to be the pitch. The campaign or the ballot measure does not come with any actual money attached to it. That has to come later. So it's sort of a lengthy process that's going to have to play out for this to ever actually result in housing. So this is just the first step in February.
We will see. That's going to be a very interesting vote. It is time to wrap up the show. Thank you for the lightning fast conversation here. Maybe I could just go down the line here. Erica, a question or a story that maybe we haven't talked about. Is there a headline you got on your mind?
Very quickly, I think the King County Regional Homelessness Authority's 5-year plan is coming out now. It's supposed to be their plan for the next 5 years, not to solve homelessness in 5 years, but what they're going to do. And I think it's going to show, whether their efforts are going to be different than previous efforts at solving homelessness or more of the same.
Got it. Some thoughts here, Mike? Something you might be working on over the next year here?
Well, I think what's going to be interesting in Seattle is the pressure that tech salaries have contributed to the issue of housing affordability. I think that a couple of things are happening. Those salaries are going to start to flatten to some degree, and you're going to see layoffs in Seattle. I mean, that's a bad thing, but I do think that level of pressure on housing affordability is going to diminish over the course of the next year. A lot more units are going to be coming online. It's going to be interesting to see where the average one-bedroom apartment ends up in Seattle, I think, over the course of the next year. And I think that most forecasters would say that that's at least going to start leveling off some.
Okay. Very interesting to check that out. Amy, we've got about 30 seconds. A story you're working on for next year.
I just take some hope from some of the kind of new tendrils of growth that we're seeing, like Pioneer Square. The Chief Seattle Club opened this beautiful new kind of housing and cafe, indigenous cafe and medical clinic. And I just, it's great to see some beautiful, with tons of art everywhere. It's great to see something new and, being born, because we've lost a lot in the last few years.
That's true. A happy new year, hopefully on the way. Thank you all for your input here, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media about the biggest headlines of this past year? One group writes, the cost of living in the Evergreen State is 13% higher than the national average. Olympia needs to provide relief before their tax base finds greener pastures. Another person says, we need dense apartments around all of these Seattle parks so people can get here and actually use them. We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org. or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Coming up next time, we look ahead to the start of the 2023 legislative session. There will be several new faces representing Seattle and Olympia in January. Hear from lawmakers about how they plan to spend a $70 billion budget and solve a major problem with our state's drug possession law. Don't miss our legislative preview show next time on City Inside Out. Happy holidays. I hope you join us.